The scalding tea hit my white blouse before I even registered what was happening. The liquid spread across the silk fabric in an ugly brown stain, soaking through to my skin with a shock of heat. The intern's shrill voice cut through the lobby like a siren, drowning out the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the soft murmur of professionals at work. "My husband owns this company, and you just assaulted me." I stood there, frozen for half a heartbeat, feeling the sticky warmth seep into the expensive fabric. Then I calmly pulled out my phone, my fingers steady despite the rage simmering beneath my composed exterior. "Really?" I said, my voice quiet but clear. "Let me call him right now. Let me rewind 12 hours to the moment this whole mess began. My name is Amara Cole, and I am 31 years old. To anyone who bothered to look at the corporate filings, I am the board chair and silent majority owner of Zenith Holdings, controlling 60% of the shares in one of the most successful consulting firms on the East Coast. But most people never bothered to look. They saw the nameplate on the top floor that read Cole Brennan, Chief Executive Officer, and assumed he was the one calling the shots. That was exactly how I wanted it. My late father had taught me that real power didn't need a spotlight. It worked best in the shadows, quietly steering the ship while others took the credit in the scrutiny. For 3 years, that arrangement had worked beautifully. I handled strategy, acquisitions, and the major clients while Cole managed daily operations and played the role of charismatic leader at industry conferences. The Boeing 777 had touched down at JFK just after dawn, the wheels hitting the runway with a gentle thump that jolted me awake from a restless half-sleep. I had spent the last month in Singapore, personally overseeing an audit of a potential acquisition target. It was the kind of detail work that Cole simply couldn't handle. He was brilliant at networking, at charming investors over whiskey and cigars, but put him in a room with balance sheets and compliance documents, and he was utterly lost. I was supposed to return tomorrow. My assistant had booked my flight, arranged for the car service, even scheduled a welcome back dinner with Cole at our favorite steakhouse in Midtown. But something had been nagging at me for weeks, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch from 8,000 miles away. The quarterly reports looked fine on paper, but there were small inconsistencies in the expense accounts. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make me wonder what was happening while I was gone. So I changed my flight. I landed early, declined the car service, and took an Uber straight to Zenith's headquarters in Lower Manhattan. The building rose 30 stories into the crisp morning sky, all glass and steel, reflecting the sunrise in shades of gold and pink. My father had signed the lease on the 10th floor when Zenith was just him and two analysts working out of a cramped office that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. Now we occupied floors 10 through 15, a monument to everything he had built and everything I had expanded. I could have entered through the private executive entrance on the side of the building, taken the express elevator straight to my office on the 15th floor, and demanded an explanation from Cole in the privacy of the boardroom. But I wanted to see the company through fresh eyes, the way a stranger would. I wanted to understand what Zenith had become in my absence. The main lobby was already busy at 8:45 in the morning. Analysts in sharp suits hurried toward the elevators, clutching coffee cups and leather portfolios. The receptionist greeted visitors with practiced professionalism. The massive Zenith Holdings logo gleamed on the wall behind her desk, brushed steel letters that caught the morning light. Everything looked exactly as it should. I stood near a column by the entrance, my carry-on suitcase at my side, wearing a simple white blouse and black slacks. I had pulled my dark hair into a low ponytail on the plane, and my face was bare except for a touch of concealer to hide the exhaustion from the 14-hour flight. To anyone glancing my way, I was just another consultant or client waiting for a meeting. That was when I noticed the contrast. On one side of the lobby, senior analysts sat in the waiting area, reviewing documents with quiet focus. Their posture was professional, their voices low and respectful. But near the revolving doors, a very different scene was unfolding. A young woman stood with her hands on her hips, her voice rising with each word. She couldn't have been older than 23, with long blonde hair styled in beachy waves and makeup applied with a heavy hand. She wore a hot pink bodycon dress that was so short and tight it belonged in a nightclub. Not a corporate office. A blue lanyard hung around her neck with an intern badge that read Madison Pierce in bold letters. "Are you kidding me right now?" she was saying to someone I couldn't see. "I specifically told you to park my car in the covered garage, not out on the street. Do you have any idea how much that paint job cost?" I shifted slightly to get a better view. The target of her tirade was James, the elderly security guard who had worked at Zenith since my father's early days. He was a Vietnam veteran with kind eyes and white hair, a man who had always greeted me with a respectful nod and a warm smile. Now he stood with his shoulders hunched, his weathered face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm very sorry, miss," James said quietly. "It's been a busy morning and the garage is full. I'll move it as soon as a spot opens up." Madison rolled her eyes dramatically. "A spot opens up? I don't have time for this. You're so slow. It's like watching paint dry. How does someone like you even keep a job here?" I felt my jaw tighten. The disrespect was staggering, and what made it worse was that Madison wasn't even bothering to lower her voice. She wanted people to see her assert dominance over an older employee, to establish herself as someone important. Then she did something that made my blood pressure spike. She pulled out her iPhone, flipped the camera to face herself, and her entire demeanor transformed. The scowl melted into a bright, saccharine smile. "Hey everyone, good morning to all my amazing followers." Her voice had shifted to a chirpy, performative tone. "So, I'm dealing with some seriously incompetent staff this morning, but whatever. I'm at my super important internship at this massive consulting firm, being fabulous as always. Don't forget to like and share, babes." She was live streaming from the lobby during work hours while berating an employee. I glanced at my watch. It was 8:55. The workday at Zenith officially began at 8. She was nearly an hour late, dressed inappropriately, and treating the office like her personal social media studio. A hot wave of anger rose in my chest. This wasn't just unprofessional. It was a symptom of something deeply wrong. I had built Zenith on a foundation of respect, integrity, and excellence. My father had treated every employee like family, from the executive team to the maintenance staff. And now this entitled intern was spitting on that legacy while Cole, the man I had trusted to uphold our values, was apparently nowhere to be found. I wanted to see how far this would go. I wanted to know if anyone would step in, if any manager or senior employee would enforce the standards I had spent years establishing. So I stayed where I was, watching and waiting. Madison finished her live stream with a few more hair tosses and pouts, then turned her attention back to James. "Seriously, just move to my car now. I don't care if you have to kick someone else out of their spot. Make it happen." That was enough. I couldn't stand there and watch this toxic behavior continue unchecked. I pulled my suitcase forward and walked directly toward them, my heels clicking on the polished marble floor. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but firm. I stopped a few feet from Madison and met her eyes. "This is a professional workplace, not a social media set. You're an hour late, you're dressed inappropriately, and you're treating a senior employee with disrespect. I suggest you apologize to him and get to work." Madison slowly turned to face me, her expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. She looked me up and down, taking in my travel rumpled clothes and minimal makeup with obvious disdain. I could see the calculation in her eyes. She didn't recognize me, which meant I was nobody important. "And who are you supposed to be?" Madison said, her tone dripping with contempt. "Some random consultant? This is none of your business. I'm handling my employee." "He's not your employee," I replied evenly. "And if you work here, you need to follow the same code of conduct as everyone else." Madison laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Oh, you're one of those uptight corporate types. Let me guess. You got passed over for a promotion, and now you're bitter." She raised her phone again, pointing the camera at my face. "Look at this, guys. Some Karen is trying to lecture me about dress codes. Probably jealous because she's old and boring." I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was taking note of every word, every gesture. This wasn't just immaturity. This was someone who believed she was untouchable. "Put the phone down," I said quietly. "You don't have my permission to film me." "I don't need your permission," Madison shot back. "This is a public space and I can film whatever I want. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have important work to do. She made an exaggerated show of turning away from me, but as she did, her arms swung out in a wide arc. The large iced coffee she was holding, still half full, flew from her hand and splashed directly onto my white blouse. The cold liquid hit me like a slap, soaking through the fabric instantly. The smell of sweet vanilla syrup filled my nostrils as the coffee dripped down my front and onto my black slacks. For a moment, the lobby went completely silent. Everyone within earshot turned to stare. Then Madison began to wail. It was a theatrical, over-the-top performance that would have been laughable if it weren't so calculated. She clutched her chest and stumbled backward, her eyes wide with manufactured shock. "Oh my God, what did you do?" she shrieked. "You pushed me! You made me spill my coffee! This dress cost $2,000 and now it's ruined." I looked down at the coffee spreading across my blouse, then back up at Madison. There wasn't a drop of liquid on her pink dress. The coffee cup lay on the floor between us, empty. She had thrown it deliberately, and now she was trying to twist the narrative. A murmur rippled through the growing crowd of onlookers. Some people pulled out their phones to record the confrontation. Others whispered to each other, trying to piece together what had happened. I could see the confusion on their faces, the uncertainty about who to believe. Madison pressed her advantage. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice just enough that only I could hear her next words. "You should apologize right now and offer to pay for my dress," she hissed. "Because if you don't, I'll make your life a living nightmare. Do you know who my husband is?" I raised an eyebrow. "Enlighten me." Her lips curled into a triumphant smirk. "My husband is Cole Brennan, the CEO of this entire company. He has the power to hire and fire anyone he wants. One word from him and you'll be blacklisted from every consulting firm in this city. So I suggest you get on your knees and apologize before I call him down here." Hearing Cole's name come out of this arrogant intern's mouth felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My husband. She had called Cole her husband. The man I had trusted to run my company, the man I had mentored and promoted, apparently had a young mistress who was flaunting her connection to him right here in the lobby. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger didn't disappear. It crystallized into something cold and sharp, a clarity of purpose that cut through the shock and betrayal. I pulled a handkerchief from my purse and wiped the coffee from my hands with deliberate slowness. Then I looked up at Madison, and I let myself smile. It was a small, controlled smile that didn't reach my eyes. "You said your husband is Cole Brennan," I repeated, my voice carrying clearly through the silent lobby. "That's right," Madison said, louder now, playing to the crowd. "So you better watch how you speak to me. Cole and I are very close, if you know what I mean. He gives me anything I want." I nodded slowly as if considering this information. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My fingers were perfectly steady as I unlocked the screen. "Your husband," I said again, savoring each word. "How fascinating. Let me call him right now." Madison's confidence flickered for just a moment. "What?" "You heard me." I scrolled through my contacts, found the name I was looking for, and held up the phone so she could see the screen. The contact name read Cole Brennan, and beneath it was his direct office line. "I think Cole should come down here and meet his wife, don't you?" The color began to drain from Madison's face. "Wait, how do you have his direct number?" I didn't answer. Instead, I tapped the screen and switched the call to speakerphone, turning the volume up to maximum. The lobby had gone so quiet I could hear the soft rustle of fabric as people leaned in to listen. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Madison's eyes darted around the lobby, suddenly looking far less certain. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. On the fourth ring, the call connected. Cole's voice came through the speaker, slightly breathless and distracted. "Hello?" I looked directly at Madison as I spoke, my voice calm and clear. "Cole," I said, "it's Amara. I'm standing in the lobby right now, and there's someone here who says she's your wife. I think you should come down and meet her." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could picture Cole in his corner office on the 15th floor, probably sitting at the mahogany desk my father had custom made for the CEO position. He would be staring at his phone screen, watching my name flash Intern, his mind racing to calculate what this call meant. Amara? His voice cracked slightly. You're back? I thought your flight wasn't until tomorrow. I was going to pick you up from the airport. Change of plans, I said, keeping my tone conversational, almost friendly. The crowd around us had swelled. Analysts and consultants were emerging from the elevators, drawn by the commotion. I could see phones recording from multiple angles. Good. I wanted witnesses. I decided to come home early and see how things were running in my absence. It's been quite educational. Cole cleared his throat. I heard the sound of a chair scraping, probably him standing up, preparing to move. That's great. That's wonderful. Listen, I'm in the middle of something right now. Why don't you head up to your office and I'll come meet you in about 20 minutes. We can catch up properly. No, I said simply. I think you should come down here. Right now. There's a young woman in the lobby who claims to be your wife, and I'm very curious to hear your explanation. The sharp intake of breath on the other end was audible even over the speaker. My what? Amara, I don't know what you're talking about. Someone's clearly confused or trying to cause trouble. I glanced at Madison. She had gone very pale, her eyes wide as she stared at the phone in my hand. The pieces were starting to come together in her head, but she wasn't quite there yet. She still had just enough hope that this was some kind of misunderstanding. The young woman is standing right here, I continued, my voice taking on an edge of steel. She's wearing a pink dress that's completely inappropriate for an office environment. She has an intern badge with the name Madison Pierce. And she just threw hot coffee on me while threatening to have you fire me and blacklist me from the industry. She seemed very confident that you would do whatever she asked because, in her words, you're her husband and you give her anything she wants. The lobby had gone so quiet I could hear the traffic outside through the revolving doors. Every eye was fixed on me, on Madison, on the phone broadcasting Cole's increasingly panicked breathing. I have no idea who this person is, Cole said, his words coming faster now. This is clearly some kind of unstable individual. I'll call security right now and have them removed. You shouldn't have to deal with this, Amara. Just go upstairs and I'll handle it. Madison's face had shifted from pale to flushed. She reached out as if to grab my phone, then thought better of it. Cole? Baby, it's me, it's Madison. What are you doing? Tell her who I am. Tell her about us. I tilted the phone slightly toward her so Cole could hear her clearly. See, I said, she seems to know you quite well. She's calling you baby. That's an interesting term for someone you claim never to have met. I don't know what game this woman is playing, Cole said, but his voice had taken on a desperate quality. Amara, please, 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes to get down there, and I'll explain everything. You have 3 minutes, I said, starting now. I didn't hang up. I simply lowered the phone slightly, keeping the line connected, letting Cole hear everything that was about to happen in the lobby. Madison was staring at me with a mixture of confusion and growing horror. Who are you? She whispered. I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned to James, the security guard, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes. James, do you know who I am? James straightened immediately, his military training evident in the way he snapped to attention. Yes, ma'am, you're Ms. Cole, the chairwoman. A collective gasp went through the crowd. I saw several people's expressions shift from curiosity to shock. Madison stumbled backward a step, shaking her head. No, she said. No, that's not possible. The chairwoman is some old man. Cole said the owner lives in Europe and never comes to the office. He said he runs everything. I smiled at her, and this time there was genuine amusement in it, though it was the cold amusement of watching someone's delusions shatter in real time. My father was the founder. He passed away 3 years ago and left the controlling stake to me. I've been the majority owner and board chair since I was 28. Cole is the CEO, which means he reports to me. He runs the daily operations because I allow him to, not because he has any actual power. Madison's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the edge of a nearby planter to steady herself. But he told me that he owned the company. He said he was buying me an apartment, that we were going to get married as soon as his divorce was final. His divorce, I repeated. Cole isn't married. He's never been married. What exactly did he tell you? The crowd pressed closer, everyone straining to hear. I could see the recognition dawning on several faces. Employees who had clearly known about Madison and Cole's relationship, but had been too afraid to say anything. This was the moment the secrets came spilling out. Madison's voice rose to a near shriek. He said he had a wife who didn't understand him. He said she was cold and focused only on work, that their marriage was over in everything but name. He said once the divorce was finalized, we'd go public with our relationship and I'd be the CEO's wife. He promised me. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. Cole has been single for the past 2 years. Before that, he was dating a woman named Jennifer who works in corporate law. They broke up because he couldn't commit. There has never been a wife. There has never been a divorce. Whatever he told you was a lie designed to string you along. Madison shook her head violently. No, you're lying. He loves me. He took me to Cabo last month. He bought me jewelry. He pays for my apartment. With what money? I asked softly. She blinked at me, confused by the question. With his money. He's the CEO. Cole makes a very generous salary, I said. $350,000 a year, plus performance bonuses. But that's not enough to fund the lifestyle you're describing. A luxury apartment in Manhattan, trips to Cabo, expensive jewelry. That requires access to a much larger pool of funds. I pulled up my email on my phone, scrolling to the message my CFO had sent me 2 weeks ago. It was the reason I had come home early, the red flag that had been bothering me from Singapore. I turned the phone so Madison could see the attachment, a spreadsheet showing expense reports from the past 6 months. This is the training and development budget, I said. It's supposed to fund professional development courses, industry certifications, and educational seminars for our employees. In the past 6 months, over $200,000 has been allocated to something called Pierce Consulting Services, LLC. Do you know what that is, Madison? Her face had gone from flushed to ashen. She didn't answer. I had my lawyers look into it, I continued. Pierce Consulting Services, LLC is registered in Delaware. The sole owner and operator is Madison Pierce. The company has provided exactly 0 services to Zenith Holdings, but it has received regular payments of $10,000 to $15,000 every 2 weeks, approved personally by Cole Brennan. The murmur that went through the crowd was louder now, angry. These were people who worked hard for their salaries, who followed the rules, and they were learning that an intern with no qualifications had been stealing money from their company with the CEO's help. Madison's breathing had become rapid and shallow. That's not stealing, that's consulting fees. I provided valuable insights. What insights? I asked. You were hired as an intern 2 months ago. Your resume listed a bachelor's degree in communications from a school that doesn't exist. You have no professional experience, no relevant skills, and according to your supervisor, you've completed exactly 0 assigned tasks. You show up late, you leave early, and you spend most of your time on social media. So tell me, Madison, what consulting services did you provide that were worth $200,000? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. She was trapped and she knew it. The elevator chimed. Every head turned toward the sound. The doors slid open and Cole Brennan burst out like a man fleeing a burning building. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie askew. He had clearly run down 15 flights of stairs rather than wait for the elevator. Sweat beaded on his forehead and his expensive suit jacket was rumpled. He saw the crowd first, then his eyes found me. For a split second, his expression was pure terror. Then his gaze shifted to Madison, and something ugly crossed his face. It wasn't love or concern, it was hatred. The look of a man staring at the person who had just destroyed his life. Madison saw him and her entire demeanor changed. She lunged forward, grabbing his arm with both hands. Cole, thank God you're here. This woman is insane. She's making up lies about us. Tell her who I am to you. Cole's arm went rigid under her touch. He stared down at her hands on his sleeve like they were insects he wanted to shake off. When he spoke, his voice was cold and flat. Get your hands off me. Madison's grip loosened in shock. What? Cole, it's me. It's Madison. Tell them we're together. Tell them you love me." Cole yanked his arm away from her and took a large step back. He turned to face me, ignoring Madison completely. His eyes were pleading, desperate. "Amara, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I said, my voice calm despite the fury burning in my chest. "Because it looks like you've been embezzling money from the company to fund a relationship with an unqualified intern who you led to believe you were married to someone else. It looks like you created a fake consulting company to funnel corporate funds to your mistress. It looks like you've been committing fraud while I was overseas, trusting you to run my father's company with integrity. So please, Cole, explain to me what I'm misunderstanding." Cole's face cycled through several emotions: fear, anger, calculation. I could see him trying to find an angle, a way to spin this that would save him. He opened his mouth to speak, but Madison cut him off. "How dare you act like you don't know me?" she screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. "You were in my bed last night. You told me you loved me. You said as soon as you got the next bonus, you'd buy me the penthouse condo I wanted." Cole's face went purple. He whirled on her, and what happened next sent a shockwave through the lobby. His hand came up fast and hard, connecting with Madison's face with a crack that echoed off the marble walls. The force of the blow sent her stumbling backward. She tripped over her own high heels and went down hard, landing on the floor with a cry of pain. Her phone skittered across the marble, the screen cracking on impact. The crowd gasped. Several people rushed forward, but I held up a hand to stop them. I wanted to see what Cole would do next, wanted everyone to see exactly who he really was. Cole stood over Madison, his chest heaving, his face contorted with rage. "Shut your mouth," he snarled. "I don't know you. You're some delusional intern who's been stalking me. I've never touched you. I've never promised you anything. You're making all of this up for attention." Madison sat on the floor, one hand pressed to her reddening cheek, staring up at Cole with absolute disbelief. Tears streamed down her face, cutting tracks through her heavy makeup. "You hit me," she whispered. "You actually hit me." Then something shifted in her expression. The shock gave way to fury, and with it came a reckless abandon. She had nothing left to lose, and she knew it. If she was going down, she was taking Cole with her. "You want to pretend you don't know me?" Madison shrieked from the floor. "Fine, let's see how long you can keep that up." She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the hand someone offered to help her. She pulled her purse open and dumped the contents on the floor. Lipstick, gum, receipts, and finally a key card attached to a leather Gucci keychain. She held it up for everyone to see. "This is the key to your apartment," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "The penthouse in Tribeca. You gave it to me 3 weeks ago. You said I could come and go whenever I wanted." Cole's eyes widened. "That's not mine. I don't know where you got that, but it's not mine." "Really?" Madison laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "The address is 145 Franklin Street, Unit 3201. Your name is on the lease." "Want me to describe the bedroom?" "The king-size bed with the navy blue sheets, the painting of the sailboat over the dresser, the bathroom with the rainfall shower where we—" "Enough!" Cole shouted, his face now bright red. "You broke into my apartment. You're a stalker. I'm calling the police." Madison pulled out her phone, the screen cracked but still functional. She swiped frantically through her photos. "I have pictures," she said. "Pictures of us together. Pictures you sent me. Messages. Thousands of messages." She turned the phone toward the crowd, scrolling through image after image. Cole with his arm around her at a restaurant. Cole kissing her on a beach. Text messages with explicit content. Declarations of love. Promises for the future. The evidence was damning and undeniable. Cole made a lunge for the phone, but two of our senior analyst spouts stepped forward and blocked him. They were both large men, former college athletes, and their message was clear. The violence was over. "You can't do this to me," Cole said, his voice rising to a shout. "I built this company. I brought in the clients. I made Zenith what it is today." I stepped forward then, closing the distance between us until I was standing directly in front of him. I was a full head shorter than Cole, but in that moment, I felt like a giant staring down at an insect. "You built nothing," I said, my voice low and deadly. My father built this company from the ground up, working 18-hour days, sacrificing time with his family, pouring every ounce of his energy into creating something meaningful. When he died, I took his small firm and turned it into a billion-dollar enterprise. I brought in the major clients. I negotiated the deals. I developed the strategies. You were the front man, Cole Sham. You smiled and shook hands and took credit for work you didn't do. And the moment I turned my back, you started stealing from me. Cole's defiance crumbled. His shoulders sagged and his eyes dropped to the floor. Amara, please, I made mistakes. I'll fix it. I'll pay back every penny. Just give me a chance to make this right. You had every chance, I said. I trusted you. I gave you a position most people spend decades working toward. I defended you to the board when they questioned whether you had the experience. I covered for you when you made mistakes, and you repaid that trust by committing fraud and assault in my lobby. I turned to address the crowd that had gathered, easily over 50 people now, including several members of our leadership team who had come down from the upper floors. I want everyone here to understand something, I said, projecting my voice so it carried across the lobby. What happened today is a failure of leadership, my leadership. I allowed someone I trusted to operate without sufficient oversight. I prioritized my own projects over the health of our company culture. That ends now. I pulled my phone out again and dialed a number I had saved for emergencies. It rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Vance and Associates, how may I direct your call? This is Amara Cole. I need to speak with Elena Rodriguez immediately. One moment, please. The hold music played for perhaps 10 seconds before a woman's voice came on the line, alert and focused. Elena Rodriguez was our head of compliance and internal audit, a former federal prosecutor who had left the government to work in corporate law. I had hired her personally 2 years ago, impressed by her reputation for being thorough and utterly incorruptible. Ms. Cole, Elena said, I wasn't expecting to hear from you until tomorrow. How was Singapore? Productive, I said. Elena, I need you in the main lobby immediately. Bring the preliminary audit file I asked you to prepare before I left. There was a pause. The one regarding the training budget discrepancies? That's the one. I'll be right down. I ended the call and looked at Cole. You should know that I didn't just come home early on a whim. I've been watching the financials remotely for the past month. When I noticed the irregularities, I asked Elena to start an investigation. She's been very thorough. Cole's face had gone from red to white. You've been investigating me? I've been investigating everyone, I corrected. That's what audits are for. You just happen to be the one breaking the law. The elevator chimed again. Elena Rodriguez stepped out, a leather folder tucked under her arm. She was a woman in her mid-40s with steel gray hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She took in the scene, the crowd, Madison sitting on the floor, Cole looking like he might be sick, and me standing in the center with coffee stains on my blouse, and she didn't even blink. Ms. Cole, she said, walking directly to me, I have the files you requested. She opened the folder and handed me a thick stack of papers, bank statements, wire transfer receipts, email correspondence, expense reports. Every piece of evidence documenting Cole's fraud laid out in meticulous detail. I took the papers and held them up so everyone could see. This is a complete record of every fraudulent transaction Cole Brennan has authorized over the past 6 months. $200,000 funneled to a shell company, $50,000 in unauthorized corporate credit card charges for personal expenses, $30,000 in cash advances with no receipts or documentation. In total, Cole has stolen nearly $300,000 from Zenith Holdings. The murmurs grew louder. I saw anger on the faces around me, particularly among the junior employees who worked long hours for modest salaries, while Cole had been living lavishly on stolen money. Elena stepped forward, her voice clear and authoritative. In addition to the financial crimes, I've documented several HR violations. Mr. Brennan hired Miss Pierce as an intern, despite her failure to meet the minimum qualifications. He approved her timesheets showing 40 hours per week, when security logs show she rarely stayed more than 2 hours per day. He retaliated against 3 employees who attempted to report the inappropriate relationship. reassigning them to less desirable projects and denying their requests for promotions. Madison made a choking sound. 3 other employees knew about us? Multiple employees knew, Elena confirmed. They tried to do the right thing. Mr. Brennan punished them for it. I looked at Cole, who seemed to have aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. Do you have anything to say? He lifted his head, and I saw tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Amara. I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just a few thousand to help Madison with rent. Then she wanted more. And I couldn't say no. I was going to pay that back, I swear. With what money? I asked. Your salary? That would take years. Or were you planning to steal more? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew the truth. He would have kept stealing until he was caught, and he would have blamed everyone but himself. I turned to Elena. Call the police. I want both of them arrested. Elena pulled out her phone and dialed 911 with the efficiency of someone who had done it many times before. Her voice was calm and professional as she explained the situation to the dispatcher, requesting officers to respond to a theft and assault at our address. Madison began to sob loudly, her earlier bravado completely gone. Cole just stood there, silent and defeated. The crowd had grown even larger. People from other companies in the building had wandered over, drawn by the commotion. I could see phones everywhere, recording every moment. By this evening, this whole incident would be all over social media, the news, the industry gossip networks. Zenith Holdings was about to become infamous, and I needed to control the narrative before it spiraled out of control. I raised my voice to address everyone assembled. I know this is shocking and disturbing. Many of you came to work this morning expecting a normal day, and instead you've witnessed something that should never happen in any professional environment. I want you to know that this is not who we are. This is not the company my father built, and it's not the company I intend to run. I took a breath, feeling the weight of every eye on me. Effective immediately, Cole Brennan is terminated from his position as CEO. All of his decision-making authority is revoked. Any instructions he has given you in the past week are to be disregarded pending review by the compliance team. Cole made a strangled sound of protest, but I continued without acknowledging him. Madison Pierce's internship is also terminated. She will not be returning to this building. Both of them will be escorted out by security as soon as the police have finished their investigation. I paused, then added, I also want to apologize to the 3 employees who tried to report this misconduct and were punished for it. That should never have happened. Elena will be meeting with each of you today to discuss how we can make this right. If anyone else has witnessed unethical behavior and been afraid to speak up, I want you to know that you can come forward now without fear of retaliation. My door is open. A hand went up in the crowd. It was Sarah Chen, one of our senior analysts, a woman who had been with Zenith for 5 years. Ms. Cole, who's going to run the company now? If Cole is gone, who takes over as CEO? It was a fair question, and one I had been thinking about since the moment I saw Madison in the lobby. For now, I will personally oversee all executive functions. I'm moving my office down to the 15th floor, and I'll be here full-time. We'll begin a search for a new CEO immediately, but I want to make sure we find the right person, someone who shares our values and has the integrity to lead this company forward. Another hand, this time from Marcus Williams, our head of business development. What about our clients? They're going to hear about this. How do we reassure them that we're still stable? I'll be calling each of our major clients personally today, I said. I'll be transparent about what happened and what steps we're taking to address it. Our work speaks for itself. We have an excellent team, we deliver results, and one person's criminal behavior doesn't change that. If any client wants to walk, that's their choice. But I believe most of them will stay because they hired us for our expertise, not for Cole's charm. The distant sound of sirens grew louder. 2 NYPD patrol cars pulled up outside the building, their lights flashing. 4 officers entered through the revolving doors, their hands resting on their belts as they assessed the situation. The senior officer, a woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes on her sleeve, walked directly to me. I'm Sergeant Martinez. We got a call about theft and assault. That's correct, I said. I gestured to Cole. This is Cole Brennan. Until this morning, he was the CEO of this company. He has embezzled approximately $300,000 over the past 6 months and assaulted this woman about 20 minutes ago. I pointed to Madison, who was still sitting on the floor, her face swollen where Cole had struck her. Sergeant Martinez looked at Madison, then at Cole. Is this true, sir? Cole's mouth opened and closed. His lawyer instincts were probably screaming at him to stay silent, but he was too broken to think straight. I didn't assault anyone. She was lying about our relationship. I reacted badly. So you did strike her, Sergeant Martinez clarified. Cole's shoulders slumped. Yes. The sergeant nodded to one of the other officers who moved forward with handcuffs. Cole Brennan, you're under arrest for assault in the 3rd degree. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the officer read Cole his Miranda rights and secured the handcuffs, I handed Sergeant Martinez the folder Elena had given me. This contains all the documentation of the financial crimes, bank statements, forged approvals, wire transfers. Our head of compliance can walk you through everything. Elena stepped forward and began explaining the audit findings to the sergeant in precise, legal language. Madison was still on the floor, watching Cole being arrested with wide, shocked eyes. Another officer approached her. Ma'am, do you need medical attention? Madison touched her swollen cheek and winced. I don't know, maybe? We'll have the paramedics check you out, the officer said kindly. Then his tone shifted. But I need to inform you that you're also under arrest for fraud. According to these documents, you received payments for services you didn't provide. That's wire fraud, and it's a federal crime. The color drained from Madison's face. But I didn't know it was illegal. Cole told me it was consulting fees. He set everything up. You'll have a chance to explain that to the district attorney, the officer said. For now, I need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back. Madison stood on shaky legs. As the officer cuffed her, she turned to look at me, her expression a mixture of hatred and desperate pleading. This is your fault, she hissed. You ruined everything. Cole and I were happy until you came back. I looked at her, this young woman who had been so arrogant an hour ago, and felt a wave of something that wasn't quite pity, but wasn't satisfaction either. Cole was using you, I said quietly. He lied to you about being married. He lied about owning the company. He lied about buying you an apartment. Everything he promised you was built on stolen money and false pretenses. Even if I had never come back, it would have collapsed eventually. It always does. Madison's face crumpled. She started crying again, but this time it wasn't the performative wailing from before. These were real tears, the sound of genuine devastation as her entire fantasy world came crashing down. The officers led both Cole and Madison out through the revolving doors. I watched through the glass as they were placed in separate patrol cars. Cole stared straight ahead, his face blank. Madison was still crying, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. The cars pulled away, sirens wailing, and just like that, the 2 people who had nearly destroyed my company were gone. The crowd began to disperse slowly. People returned to their desks, their voices low as they processed what they had witnessed. I stood in the center of the lobby, suddenly aware of how exhausted I was. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was wearing off, leaving behind bone-deep fatigue. James, the security guard, approached me hesitantly. Ms. Cole? Are you all right? I looked down at my coffee-stained blouse and managed a small smile. I've been better, James, but thank you for asking. If it's worth anything, he said, his voice gruff with emotion, your father would have been proud of how you handled that. He always said you had more steel in your spine than people gave you credit for. The unexpected compliment made my throat tight. Thank you, I managed. That means a lot. Elena appeared at my elbow. We should go upstairs. You need to change clothes, and we have a lot of work to do. The police will want formal statements from both of us. The board needs to be notified, and we should get ahead of the media coverage before this turns into a feeding frenzy. She was right, of course. There was so much to do, so many fires to put out. But first, I needed a moment to myself, just one moment to process what had happened. Give me 10 minutes, I said. I'll meet you in my office. Elena nodded and headed toward the elevators. I turned to walk toward the private executive entrance, but a voice stopped me. Ms. Cole? I turned to see Sarah Chen, the senior analyst who had asked about leadership earlier. I saw her. She was standing with two other employees, all three of them looking nervous but determined. We're the ones who tried to report Cole's relationship with Madison, Sarah said. He transferred me to the Hartford project, which meant I had to commute 2 hours each way. He denied my promotion and gave it to someone with less experience. And he made it very clear that if I said anything else, it would get worse. The other two employees nodded, their faces tight with remembered fear and anger. I felt a fresh wave of fury at Cole, but I kept my voice calm and professional. I'm so sorry that happened to you. It should never have gotten to that point. Elena will be reaching out to each of you today to discuss compensation for what you've been through and to reverse any retaliatory actions Cole took. Your promotions will be reviewed immediately, and I promise you, there will be no more retaliation. You did the right thing, even when it cost you. That takes courage. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. Thank you. We were starting to think we'd made a mistake, that we should have just kept our heads down. Never, I said firmly. A company is only as strong as the integrity of its people. You three are exactly the kind of employees Zenith needs. I left them and made my way to the executive elevator. The doors closed, sealing me in blessed silence. I leaned against the polished wood paneling and closed my eyes, letting myself feel the full weight of the morning's events. My father had always told me that leadership meant making hard choices, often choices that would make people angry or hurt. He said the true test of a leader wasn't how you handled success, but how you handled betrayal and crisis. Today had been that test, and I had passed, but the victory felt hollow. I had lost Cole, someone I had considered a trusted colleague, if not quite a friend. I had exposed criminal behavior in my own company. I had watched two people get arrested in front of dozens of witnesses and cameras. The media coverage was going to be brutal. Clients might leave. The board would have questions I didn't yet have answers to. But I had also done what was right. I had protected my father's legacy. I had stood up for the employees who had been bullied in silence. I had shown everyone at Zenith that the rules applied to everyone, no matter their title or relationship to the owner. The elevator chimed and the doors opened onto the 15th floor. My office was at the far end of the hallway, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I walked past Cole's empty office without looking inside. My own office was exactly as I had left it a month ago. Clean desk, organized files, a photo of my father on the credenza. I closed the door, locked it, and finally allowed myself to feel the emotions I had been holding back. I wasn't sad about Cole. He had made his choices and he would face the consequences. But I was angry that he had betrayed my trust, angry that he had corrupted the company culture, angry that he had been so reckless and selfish. I went to the private bathroom attached to my office and looked at myself in the mirror. The coffee stain had dried into a brown blotch across my white blouse. My hair was falling out of its ponytail. I looked tired and rumpled, and nothing like the polished chairwoman I was supposed to be. I stripped off the ruined blouse and threw it into the trash. There was a change of clothes in the closet, emergency attire I kept for late nights at the office. I put on a fresh white button-down and a navy blue blazer, fixed my hair, and touched up my makeup. When I looked in the mirror again, I saw the woman I needed to be, strong, composed, and ready for whatever came next. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. The police want our formal statements this afternoon. I've also scheduled an emergency board meeting for 5 p.m. They're not happy. I typed back, they don't have to be happy. They just have to listen. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked out of my office. There was work to do. The rest of the day passed in a blur of controlled chaos. I gave my statement to the police, walking them through every detail of the confrontation in the lobby and everything I had learned about Cole's embezzlement. I called each of our major clients personally, explaining the situation with as much transparency as I could manage while still protecting the company's interests. Most of them were shocked but supportive. Two said they needed to discuss it with their own boards. One said he wasn't surprised that he had never trusted Cole and had only stayed because he knew I was the real power behind the company. The board meeting at 5 was tense. The 6 board members, shush members, all successful business people in their own right, gathered in the main conference room with expressions ranging from concerned to furious. They had questions, lots of questions, and I answered each one with calm precision. Yes, I had suspected financial irregularities. That was why I had ordered the audit. No, I had not expected to find Cole involved in such blatant fraud. Yes, I took responsibility for not catching it sooner. No, I did not think this would cause permanent damage to the company's reputation. Yes, I had a plan to move forward. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, the board had voted unanimously to support my decisions and to temporarily consolidate executive authority under my direct control. They also approved my request I was to hire an outside firm to conduct a comprehensive audit of all company operations, not just finances, but HR, compliance, and culture. When I finally left the building at 9 p.m., the lobby was dark and empty. The cleaning crew was working quietly, and there was no sign of the morning's drama except for a faint stain on the marble floor where Madison's coffee had spilled. I stepped outside into the cool night air and pulled out my phone to call a car. Before I could, I noticed a figure sitting on the bench outside the building. It was James, the security guard, still in his uniform, even though his shift had ended hours ago. James? I walked over to him. What are you still doing here? The story that exploded across social media that night was worse than I had anticipated. Madison's live stream, which she had never actually ended, had captured the entire confrontation in the lobby. By midnight, it had been viewed over 2 million times. By morning, that number had tripled. The headlines were sensational and divided. Some painted me as a ruthless businesswoman who had publicly humiliated 2 people. Others framed me as a hero who had exposed corruption. The business media was more measured, focusing on the corporate governance implications and speculating about Zenith's future stability. I spent the next 3 days doing damage control, press statements, client calls, internal town halls with employees. I was transparent about what had happened while being careful not to compromise the ongoing criminal investigation. The district attorney's office had assigned a prosecutor to the case, and both Cole and Madison had been arraigned on multiple charges. Cole faced counts of embezzlement, wire fraud, and assault. His bail was set at $500,000, which he couldn't pay. He sat in jail while his public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal. Madison was charged with fraud and conspiracy. Her bail was lower, $50,000, but she couldn't make that either. Both of them were stuck in the system, their former lives of luxury reduced to orange jumpsuits and county jail food. I didn't feel triumphant watching them fall. I felt tired and sad, wondering how people with so much potential could make such catastrophically stupid choices. The turning point in public opinion came on the 4th day. One of the employees Cole had retaliated against, a young analyst named Kevin Park, gave an interview to a business news channel. He described in detail how he had witnessed Cole pressuring Madison to accept payments, how he had reported it through proper channels, and how Cole had responded by reassigning him to a failing project designed to force him out of the company. 2 more employees came forward with similar stories. Then someone leaked the internal audit report to the media, showing the full scope of Cole's theft. The narrative shifted dramatically. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the owner who had come home early, discovered corruption, and acted decisively to root it out. Cole's lawyer tried to salvage his reputation by leaking a story claiming Madison had seduced him and threatened to file false harassment claims if he didn't help her. It was a desperate, ugly move that backfired spectacularly when Madison's lawyer released text messages showing Cole had pursued her aggressively, promising her a life of luxury if she played along with his schemes. They turned on each other completely. Each one tried to paint themselves as the victim of the other's manipulation. The judge was not impressed. At the preliminary hearing, she called their behavior a masterclass in mutual self-destruction and set a trial date for 3 months out. But I couldn't wait 3 months for closure. Zenith needed to move forward. I threw myself into rebuilding, starting with culture. I instituted an anonymous ethics hotline, mandatory training on workplace conduct, and a complete overhaul of our expense approval process. I promoted the three employees Cole had retaliated against, giving them leadership positions on high-profile projects. I also made myself more visible. I started having lunch in the common areas instead of my office. I held monthly town halls where any employee could ask me anything. I wanted people to see that I wasn't some distant figurehead, but a leader who cared about the company my father had built. The new CEO search took 6 weeks. I interviewed 15 candidates before finding the right person. David Martinez, our former CFO, he was 52 with impeccable credentials and a reputation for integrity that was beyond reproach. He had been with Zenith for 7 years, understood our culture, and had the respect of the entire organization. When I offered him the position, he accepted on one condition, that I remain actively involved as executive chair, providing oversight and strategic direction. It was the perfect arrangement. David handled operations while I focused on long-term strategy and major client relationships. We worked well together, and within 2 months, the company had stabilized completely. 3 months after the lobby incident, Cole pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. He got 5 years in federal prison and was ordered to repay $300,000 plus penalties. His career was over. No company would ever hire him for a leadership position again. Madison's case was more complicated. Her lawyer argued she was a victim of Cole's manipulation. And there was some truth to that, but she had also knowingly accepted money for work she never performed and had assaulted me on camera. The prosecutor offered a deal: 2 years probation, community service, and full repayment of the money. She took it. I never saw either of them again after their arrests. But 6 months later, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at my office addressed to me personally. It was from Madison, written in cramped handwriting on cheap notebook paper. The letter was an apology, not the self-serving kind that tries to minimize blame, but a genuine acknowledgement of how badly she had behaved. She wrote about working at a coffee shop now, living in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, and slowly rebuilding her life. She said watching me handle the situation with grace had taught her what real strength looked like, and she was trying to become someone worthy of a second chance. I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away. I didn't respond, but I also didn't throw it away. Maybe someday she would become the person she was trying to be. A year after everything fell apart, Zenith Holdings posted record profits. We had not only recovered but thrived, proving that integrity and competence would always triumph over charm and corruption. Standing in the lobby where it had all begun, I realized my father had been right. The hardest part of leadership wasn't making the tough calls. It was living with the consequences and finding the strength to keep building something worth protecting.